Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is the Oracle Autonomous Database Learning Lounge. I'm Marco Serasivi, a part of the product management team for Autonomous Database. And today we're going to have a very, very cool session. We're going to be talking about basically how to manage your Oracle database and a new way that Autonomous Database allows you to do that, especially in Azure, in Microsoft Azure Cloud. So for that, we're going to actually bring in Robert Green. He's a vice president of product management in the Autonomous Database team. And he's going to be talking about, how the Oracle Database at Azure actually revolutionizes the way you manage databases, right? And your Oracle databases. So it's going to show you how that allows you to focus on building valuable new apps instead of just managing infrastructure, right? Many of you might have, solutions, right, that you built, or you're migrating from on-premise applications, right? And you're going to see that that changes the game, right? So it's a totally different experience when versus, managing your own VMs, right, running Oracle database. So we're going to have other product managers as well available to answer questions throughout the Q&A. So make sure you type your questions in the Q&A box in Zoom, okay? And we're going to use the chat to distribute some links to you, all right? So keep an eye on the chat. So we're going to distribute some links there, all right? The recording of this session and all the previous sessions, and actually the other two parts of the Autonomous Database at Azure are basically on the bit.ly that you see here, the ADB-learning-lounge, okay? And speaking of links, I'm going to share some links with you guys right now. So if you take a look at your chat, at the Zoom chat, you're going to see these links, right? So it's just getting started with the Autonomous Database. We have, how to join us in LinkedIn or X, and then how to ask your questions, right? You can ask your questions to us directly in Stack Overflow, or we have a developer Slack, right? So Oracle has a developer Oracle workspace in Slack that is available externally. So you guys can join us and then search for the Oracle-Autonomous-Database, right? A channel, and then, take a look at there. So we have announcements there. We have, and we can answer questions and interact with you there. All right? Okay. Guys, so with that, I would like to ask then Robert to join us here, and thank you very much again for doing this session today for us. Appreciate it. You can start sharing your screen and take it away.
All right. Hey, thanks, Marcos. All right. Yeah. So thanks, and appreciate the poll. Hey, folks, I'm as Marcos said, Robert Green, product management with the Autonomous Database team. And yeah, we're going to talk about Autonomous Database for Azure users, and so we're going to focus on this sort of multi-cloud perspective. Although, I will say that in general, right, we're talking about the benefits of Autonomous Database, and based on the results from the survey, the poll, it looks like most people are familiar with the Oracle Database. All the great benefits that you can get from Autonomous Database, because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about is how people in Azure in particular can get those benefits. So we're going to focus on multi-cloud today. Although as you know, you can also get the Autonomous Database in cloud at customer formats in your own data centers that can work in a hybrid way with these public cloud offerings and other cloud providers, as well as dedicated regions that we offer in the Oracle Cloud portfolio these days. So many different ways to get this database. But we're going to focus on Azure, right, where we had recently announced our partnership and launched our services. And that includes both the Exadata database services as well as Autonomous Database. And we're just trying to bring our sort of best-in-class experience for database to the other hyperscalers. We have a lot of customers that are deploying multi-cloud these days because they want to basically have multiple DR targets. They want to reduce reliance on any single provider. There are things that are offered in some providers that aren't offered in others, right? So they want the flexibility to choose best in class. So for a lot of reasons, people are looking at various cloud providers, and so we're just trying to make ourselves available, just like Oracle did in the early days when it made itself available on all of the various operating systems that were around. These days, kind of clouds are almost, you could say, becoming the new OS. It's now where you run things, right? So people are trying to modernize through cloud. They're trying to simplify their operations and also simplify the whole the way you pay for things, right? So we're just bringing all that, which we've had in Oracle Cloud for a while, to Azure. Just for those who aren't aware, we have a massive global footprint in OCI. We're in like more than 50 regions these days. But as far as the Azure footprint goes, today, as of like literally right now, we could have more announced here in the next days, but there are 6 active sites for at Azure, okay, across the United States, Canada, EMEA, and we have more sites that are on their way. So this is it's a new and growing relationship between us and Azure, and you'll just see more of these popping up with time. And so what I wanted to touch on also is that we're talking about this multi-cloud. So multi-cloud is, we look at it as kind of a data ecosystem for us, where we're dealing with not just the relational database. This is more of a data platform view, where we're looking at how is it that you want to access and create analytics on top of a lot of different kinds of data that are stored in different locations. And so we are taking this technology that you're about to hear about, and we're extending it so that we can reach out to data lake formats, including other cloud providers, and we're securing access through these different cloud providers in the ways that are native to those cloud providers. We're integrating with data catalogs from multiple cloud providers so that you could use your catalog of preference. We're integrating with data visualization tools in all of these other cloud providers as well. We have native built-in tools that allow us to integrate with lots of different kinds of data sources. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. And then we're also, embracing some of these new data sharing formats that we'll also discuss in terms of we've got tooling that's built into the database to help you do that, right? To both use data shares from other providers as well as publish shares to other folks. So it's a really rich ecosystem of capabilities and cloud providers, and so that's what we're gonna talk about today. So from an Azure perspective, the Azure experience, and I think the prior session, it looks like a lot of you may have attended that session. We went into some detail about what that Azure experience looks like, the Autonomous Database at Azure, and we talked about how you can integrate with the identity services to authenticate, and various other ways that we integrate with Microsoft products like their business intelligence solutions, et cetera. And so what we're going to talk about today is just a little bit more about, well, what to expect from more of an administrative DBA perspective for the Autonomous Database. And so today, I think you saw, you can provision new databases and all that native in the Azure experience, just same as you would experience a lot of other cloud resources in Azure. But this is a new offering, and so there are still quite a bit of stuff that's going on where you jump out and you basically would go out into the OCI portals, into the OCI consoles, and perform some of the actions against the database from an administrative perspective. And so I'm gonna basically review those capabilities with you today, and so you'll understand what to expect. That'll just become more and more native in the Azure experience, as this partnership grows. Okay.
And Robert, just so you know, So folks are already asking how to access the Oracle database at Azure. So Marty is answering that question to them, right? So.
Okay, great question. And actually, there's a slide at the end of the deck, and I assume we'll distribute the slides that'll show you how to do that, right? That'll get you there. So what this is about is, how, would databases be managed in the future, right? What if it could become completely trivial to patch and upgrade lots of databases, right? What if you could remove the need to track, your software versions and one-off patches? What if you could automatically deploy security fixes and be always up to date in terms of your security posture? What if you didn't have to worry about hardware capacity planning and all that stuff? What if you could simplify your whole disaster recovery infrastructure and automate all of your database lifecycle operations? What if all this stuff became super simple, right? And that's really what autonomous database is about, okay? And so that's the exciting thing, is some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about here. There are APIs and there are things you would go out to the OCI portal to do, but actually a lot of this stuff just happens. The really exciting thing is while I said you could jump out to the OCI console to do some of these things that haven't quite been pulled into the Azure native experience, the really cool thing is that, a lot of this just happens. There's nothing for you to do. It just runs, right? So a completely different experience, I was saying, than, standing up a VM somewhere and installing the database and having to run and manage that thing yourself. It's just a vastly different experience. And that's through automation. I know that everybody's talking about AI these days, right? It's the hottest thing. But actually, you probably would realize. So we've been talking about AI from a database perspective for almost 10 years now, right? And we've been out with autonomous database for a very long time. That automation that we've been building into the service is driving more high availability, online operations and patching, backup automation, DR, all of that stuff is just basically being driven through automation layers. Okay. And so it's a fully managed service, but it's in some ways a little bit more than a managed database service, because it is also a data management platform, as I talked about, that extends itself out into your data ecosystem and allows you to do very, very rich analytics and operate on multiple different kinds of data types and workloads. All right. So pretty sophisticated and cool stuff. Okay. Now, what we're going to talk about here is at first this section of, how is it that we reduce costs and risk through that automation? And that's the DBA side. That's the side that you would normally do day to day in your VM that you no longer have to worry about. Okay. And that's because autonomous database is now helping you secure, scale, and tune your database automatically in this environment. So you're not having to do those things that you would do in other cloud service providers, but also if you've just installed Oracle in some VM somewhere and you're trying to manage it, automating the security, the scaling, the backups, the provisioning, the different workload configurations, and the tuning. Okay. So from a security perspective, I think that's top of mind for everybody these days. And if you're installing the Oracle database, the way you want to on-prem, right? There's all kinds of ways to do that in not a secure way. But in the autonomous database, all that security best practices is baked in and enforced. You pretty much have no choice. And the patching automation is just keeping you up to date with your security patches. Scaling is, you can just start with something less than a core. And with an API, fire an API and you're at hundreds of cores, right? So it's just a completely different model when it comes to scaling. And then all the costs are scaling up and down with you as you are firing those APIs and scaling up and down. And in some cases, we even have auto scaling where you don't even have to fire the APIs. We'll just do it for you. Okay. Automated backups, which we'll talk about in more detail, are just built into the system. Provisioning, well, we're talking about more than just provisioning a database here. I mean, first of all, it's an Exadata class database, so it's a different database architecture that scales and performs in a much different way. But when you provision, you get clustered solutions, you get replicated solutions with an API call, right? So, I've heard customers say that they spend days, week, setting up one of these advanced architectures, and here you get it in minutes, right? Just fire an API. The configuration for workloads for like data warehousing versus transaction processing, or even mixing those things together, we automatically set up those configurations for you. And then we tune for you as well. And there's some optional things here, but the bottom line is that there's all kinds of auto X features, right? Auto indexing, auto SPM, auto partitioning, and all these things, you can turn these things on, and to some effect, it'll automatically tune the database system for you. Okay, so very different way of thinking about how is it that you managed your database going forward. And if you managed your databases going forward, on-prem, you would be installing hardware and test validation setups, and installing all that database software yourself. And it's just a lot of mundane kind of things that you would have to do. Whereas if you're running with Autonomous Database at Azure, right, which is a Autonomous Database Serverless, you have zero effort hardware upgrades, you have zero effort, DR setups, you have zero effort maintenance, you have pretty much zero effort everything, right? It's just a completely different experience, okay? And here's an example of how that comes through to you, right? This is a graph of basically when we transition from one generation of our Exadata hardware to another. Now, normally, if you were on-prem and you were having to do a hardware refresh, that's a pretty heavyweight process. You've got a lot to do. You've got to move things around. You're going to take downtime. And in Autonomous Database, all that just happens under the covers. You go through some standard maintenance cycle, and then all of a sudden, your performance and all that stuff, you're right, here just like vastly improves. You can see execution time of some of this SQL from units of 3,000 milliseconds into 150, or sorry, 1,500 milliseconds. So like an order of magnitude change in performance, and you just got it for free, right? You didn't have to plan it. A normal maintenance cycle happened, and you didn't take any downtime. You just got the benefit of that hardware upgrade, right? No work on your side. And that's the kind of thing you should expect from an autonomous database experience. And the way it is that you would manage your database going forward. We insulate you from these kind of unplanned outages. We do that through various technologies that we have integrated into the solution, like transparent application continuity, which hides all the disruption by routing the traffic around to adjacent nodes when we need to do patching. Masking all the kind of rolling activity that's happening through the entire stack, because we're doing VM patching, we're doing infrastructure level patching. We just hide all of that stuff so that you don't experience it. And there's virtually no code changes. I mean, there's some exceptions with older apps, but if you've got the latest generation of stuff, the latest generation of client drivers and all that, it's really very minor configuration related changes to your connect strings, and you get the advantages of all this kind of online stuff. Okay. So in terms of automating your upgrades and patching, there's no action required by you. It just gets scheduled for you. There's no downtime because of application continuity and the way that we're clustering things in the back end. You are always up to date. Your security fixes are just always going in with this, each maintenance event. Full stack, right? VM, infrastructure, everything. It's just completely seamless to you. And we've been doing it for years now, and we're doing it with very, very high quality. Okay. And so that experience is, it's every week we get a schedule, it's published to you, and you can see when your next maintenance event is going to occur. But it's fully online because of this transparent application continuity. And we also have this new thing, which I'll call active patching capability. It's an active patching capability where critical updates we can actually inject those fixes into the running database processes. So it's a super lightweight way for us to basically patch, any kind of issues that are arising. And it's not something we can do for each and every single kind of patch, right? So that's why we have this weekly patches, but many critical fixes we can just inject. Okay. And then there's event notifications that you'll hook into, and I'll talk more about that can let you know about these patching activities that are going on, and you can review the full history of what's happened. Okay. In terms of your data protection, it's just an API that you fire, in Azure to say whether or not you want our sort of default SLAs, or whether you want to autonomous data guard enable your databases, which ups your SLAs, from a 99.95 to a 99.995. So we're talking about, less than 2 minutes and 10 seconds of downtime a month. Okay. And that's a worst case scenario, right? So I mean, the real experience is you don't get any downtime, right? But a worst case scenario is that 99.995 level protection. So out of the box minutes. And some cases, people want, to meet sort of, halfway there, and they don't necessarily want a full-on autonomous data guard with replicated sites and all that, but they want something like just a backup-based disaster recovery. And so you can lower your costs for some of your databases and just use backup-based DR. And the the RTO and RPO for that backup-based stuff is actually pretty good, right? So a lot of people will take a large part of their estate, use backup-based DR, and then the more important mission critical stuff, they'll click the API to get the full-on autonomous data guard. And by default, it's all clustered, and you're getting the full HA capabilities for any localized failure, which is unique to us, right? Because in other cloud providers, you don't get that, right? You have to do a VM restart, somewhere else in order to deal with, hardware failures, whereas this just happens automatically. Okay. Backups are fully automated. You don't even have to worry about them. You just decide how long you want to keep them. I mean, that's the bottom line. And for certain industries, telecom, finance, others, you may be regulated to keep long-term backups. Okay, great. Then you can take long-term backups, and we can store those for 6 years, 7 years, 10 years. And the main thing is we validate these things. We send you events to say that they're validated. So for your regulator auditing and things like that, you don't have to worry about it. It just happens. And also, so the other thing is this security posture, right? As I mentioned, it's enforced, but it's easy, right? And that's the whole thing. It's like you want a secure posture, but you don't want it to burden your operational, processes and everything, right? So we integrate it all in such a way that it's just easy, right? I mean, first of all, you don't even have to worry about accessing and securing the operating system and all that. It's just done, right? We're taking care of that for you. We're hardening those VMs. And then your security patches, like I said, are always there. Everything is encrypted on the wire, at rest. Your backups, that are being replicated to different sites, it's all encrypted along the way and where it lands, and then you have all the network level controls as well to ring fence everything in such a way that you can control like exactly which servers and which IP addresses are allowed to send any traffic to your databases at all, right? So extremely secure. And then of course integrated with these IAM providers. So whether you want to, do your user management out in Active Directory, right, which is the new Microsoft, there's a rebrand of Active Directory. If you want to use that for identity control in Azure, or you want to use native local database controls, you have these options available to you. Okay. And then there's this great tool that's free with autonomous databases called DataSafe. Okay. And this is a whole security dashboard, which allows you to do like, real-time security assessments and give you reports about, aggressive login attempts and things like that, or user role privilege changes and drift. It's just like a continuous auditing capability that's there for you, right, across your entire fleet of databases. And it provides specialized things like sensitive data discovery and masking for databases that have that kind of like PII data and all that. And it's all built in, and it's free for you to use with autonomous database services, and at Azure. Okay. And when you're moved to this model, you're really moving to this automated cloud service model. You move to a managed by exception approach to dealing with your database. So rather than you having like regular tasks that you have to go and execute, instead you subscribe to various events, various metrics, and only when exceptions are happening, do you then actively engage on a particular instance and see like what's going on. So it allows you to become much more passive and let the DevOps team at Oracle and the automation of the autonomous database do all the heavy lifting for you. Okay. And when you want to do a deep dive, because you're really like looking at specific SQL, and you want to see like how the automation is optimizing that SQL, and you may even feel like you could do a better job. And so for a particular SQL, you want to like take over control, and you want to fix your own plan and things like that. You have built-in tools like a performance hub, which is cloud native, that gives you the ability to dive down into AWR and Ash and all that stuff, and really optimize your database and the way it's operating. And all of that proactive monitoring on your side is complemented by our operations level monitoring, continuous monitoring, with just thousands of monitored metrics and alarms that we're driving our automation around, and that is creating a much better user experience for you. So you kind of move away from this, what used to be like just a support interaction model, and you move to a DevOps model. And over the years, we've hardened things to the point now where almost 90% of issues that are found, and by the way, I mean when you're dealing with a million databases, like we're managing so many databases these days, there's always random issues that are happening, right? So those, if you're unlucky and you're on one of these boxes where a memory card goes bad or whatever, we're detecting all that stuff, and we're responding, and we're resolving all that stuff without you having to do anything. Okay. And if you do see something, and you look in your event queues, or you look in, all this asynchronous monitoring channels that you've set up, and you don't see that, hey, Oracle Ops is aware that there's an issue, but I see an issue, and you actually file an SR, we're resolving that 4 times faster than we do with the typical on-prem customer, because we have everything to collect all the right logs in the right time frames and all that stuff to really like jump in and just resolve the issue. Okay, so it's a very different operational experience. And so that moves you, right, as a DBA, all this automation just moves you to a different place, right, where traditionally you have this, not only the responsibility of generating real contribution to business by architecting things well, planning, data modeling, securing things, right, and tuning things end to end. You also have all that maintenance stuff, and configuring, and networks, and storage, and patching, and backups, and all that stuff. And this takes all that other mundane stuff that really doesn't add business value off your shoulders, right? So now you can get more apps with better data models, out for your business faster, right? And really, that's the future that we're talking about. We're talking about, adding more business value instead of just mundane, repeated tasks, of patching to the next level, the next version, right? That's like the past. But there's bonuses, okay? Not only do you have all this automation and everything to make your life easier and let you do something that's more interesting, but you have these bonuses of being able to lower your costs because you're moving into this model where you no longer have to pay for peak, right? And even in cloud, right? They say it's pay per use, right? And it is to some effect because you could say, hey, give me a VM when I want one, and you get one. You don't have to order hardware and put it in your data center. It's pay per use. But when you run a workload, you typically you're sizing your VMs for peak, right? Just in case, right? When that end of week or end of month or end of quarter processing kicks in and all that, you got to be able to handle that, right? So you provision a VM that's large enough to deal with it, and then you're paying for that stuff. Whereas an autonomous database, you don't actually have to do that. There's some auto scaling capabilities that you can turn on where you set just a base number of cores, and as the SQL is flowing through the system, we've got this massive pool of threads that are running in this underlying infrastructure, and we just activate these threads in like single digit microseconds on your behalf, and you get all the performance that you need, and we're measuring that and charging you by the second, right? And it's just going up and down. You may be active for 3 seconds for some query that came in, at 3 times the number of cores that you had configured for base. And when those 3 seconds and that query is over, it's gone, right? You're not paying for that 3x, cores anymore, right? So it's a very different cost model. And then we have other cost benefits like elastic resource pools, which this is kind of like the volume discount. If you're one of those customers that has hundreds, thousands of databases, I mean, I know some Oracle customers that have in excess of 30,000 databases, right, in one customer. But that's still it's nothing compared to what we're managing in autonomous database these days. And with tools like elastic resource pools, if you are one of those customers, you can basically bring all of these individual databases into a billing pool, if you will, and then you get costing benefits similar to what I described on the auto scaling, except it's more about like sharing CPU utilization. So you can put, like, for example, hundreds and hundreds of dev test databases together in a pool. And because those databases are almost never active because you're just writing functional code and all that, then the CPU utilization will be very low. So even though you may have put, like 500 databases into a pool, you would only be paying for 128 or, whatever, a fourth of that in your bill, right? And so it can really drive huge cost benefits for you. And I guess this is a visual on it, but it's just it's a volume discount, and it's purely a billing thing. Because you're using a lot of databases, we would allow you then to pool these things together and optimize your costs, right? So again, cloud, you pay for what you're using, right? Not for your peak. And we continue to drive these kinds of things into the services. So now that's the kind of the core of what I wanted to talk about. But I did want to say, okay, but it's a data platform, right? And so there are other aspects to this database service, which is going to simplify and accelerate your time to value in the things that you're doing with your data. Okay. It's a unified platform for analytics with all this built-in machine learning. And it has graph database capabilities, and it has JSON capabilities, and allows you to mix JSON with relational and all those kinds of things, what we call converged database capabilities. And a lot of the adjunct capabilities that turn this into a data platform are materialized through what we call Data Studio. Okay, this is part of the autonomous database. It's native. It's cloud native to the service, and it's an extension of APIs and an extension of console and user experience, where you can just point and click to do data loading, data transformations, and modeling, sharing that data out. And you can do this in it was so in such an easy way that it accelerates your time to generating value from the data that's in your organization. Okay. So you can load data through the Data Studio from anywhere, right? I mean, you can have some Excel files or what have you sitting in a local file system, and you can just drag and drop, and boom, all of a sudden you've got a visualization on some Excel data. And then combine that with your database data, for example, or you can point to certain databases and load data in, say, from OLTP systems into a data warehousing environment, or you can extend yourself out to object storages, right? It's Azure Blob Store, other S3 in AWS, wherever your data is, right? You basically load data from anywhere through Data Studio, and then you can integrate that together so multiple data sources can be merged, right? You can transform that data, you can prepare it for analytics, and it's just literally a drag and drop experience, right? And then you can click on a particular place in the data flow, and you can add some customization of SQL to do something that's required for you to restructure, right, or optimize the data for a particular analytic query. And all this stuff is drag and drop, right? It's meant to be so you don't have to be a very, very deep dive data scientist, database kind of person. You can just use this stuff natively. And that allows you to, even as a basic kind of user, to be able to create analytic views, right? And so you can basically model your data and create these views, and then extend that out, for people to to basically share that data, right? And maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but basically you can create this rich set of views off of your data, expose it out to popular tools like Tableau, Power BI in Azure, in Oracle Cloud or Oracle Analytics Cloud, right? And expose these models, and then ultimately you can share them out. And we have things that are also built in, right, for ease of use, where you can leave the data in the database itself, and instead of doing exports and things like that, you can put add-ins into your Excel environments, which will then directly connect into your autonomous databases, and then you can combine database data, with things that are in Excel, and use familiar tools. I mean, the whole point is use tools that you're comfortable with, and take something like Excel and easily extend that with SQL, which is pretty cool, right? And then like I said, ultimately be able to share this, because more and more these days, it's to capitalize on the value of your data. You need to analyze and create views that are relevant to your industry, and the models that are relevant to your industry. And then you have various consumers within your organization, or maybe even with business partners, other providers, where you want to basically exchange what you've learned about that data with other consumers, right? So you can publish and subscribe to data shares using open protocols like Delta Share, for example. And it's just all drag and drop. It's just all like built in. Again, it's part of Autonomous Database, and in our Data Studio, which is extending just a raw database functionality out into an overall data management platform, right? So it's a more of a solution than just a database. Okay. And of course, if you're creating various views on your data, various interesting things that you want to go out and share across your organization, you may also want to discover things, and so ultimately you want to create catalogs of what you're developing and what you're finding that other people have developed, and be able to leverage that across your organization. And so we are also doing that, like I said, in a way where you can use our built-in native catalogs, but you can also point at and use other catalog capabilities that are in other cloud providers, right? So we're constantly extending this capability so that you have the flexibility to use the tools and the ecosystem that you're comfortable with. Okay. Yeah, and so that's the net of it, right? Is that you don't have to worry about almost anything on the administration side anymore, right? You've got more than just a database. You've got a cloud native set of tools that allows you to, to integrate with the data ecosystem and capitalize on and create data lakes and extend your analytics and share that across your organizations and partners. And you can create this stuff, in like, a fifth of the time, right? 84% faster is how some external analysts have characterized this, right? That you can build up mixed workload systems with our data warehousing technology and our transaction processing, configurations. You can integrate that with JSON APIs and low code development environments, and reach out to these object storage repositories with data in Parquet formats, et cetera. And you can pull it all together in these nice, rich analytic views and share them out back and forth across your organization. You can do that like in a fraction of the time it would normally take to set that up and do that with like a whole bunch of mix match of tools that you might find and have to use through other providers. Okay, and all of this is coming to and a lot of it is already there, right, at Azure, and we're just over time more and more this is being pulled in a cloud native form into the Azure experience. Okay, and so you probably would want to know, like, well, okay, well, how can I get to this? Because somebody asked that at the beginning of the session, and we have a slide on it with links that'll help you go get started. But one thing you should know is there's this tool you can go query and look for on the Oracle site called the Estate Explorer. And that you should take a look at that tool if you're a large Oracle database user, because that tool you can use to point at your databases, and it'll give you a nice pie chart that helps you understand your estate, and then gives you like the green wedge of, what are the easiest databases? Which databases should I select first, right? And then you've got some yellow ones where, oh, okay, I would have to make some configuration changes. And you got some red ones that, oh, I'm using features that maybe aren't supported. But it'll give you a visual of that, right? And allow you to prepare your business and the business case for making this kind of migration, and help you plan it out and ultimately help you perform those migrations. So it's a really powerful tool, and you should look for this Estate Explorer. Okay. And this is, how do you get started today, right? There are free cloud accounts that you can sign up for, getting started guides, all that kind of stuff. And you'll get the deck, and we'll have a slide in there which says exactly how to go to the Azure site to get started with Autonomous Database at Azure as well. Okay. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Marcos for closing comments and some Q&A. Happy to take questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Robert. This was great. We had a lot of interesting questions. One comment I wanted to make was that I just shared with you guys in the chat a link to our session that we did for Estate Explorer, right? So we had a session on Estate Explorer specifically, and it's a great session explaining all the great things that that tool does, helping you, evaluate, right, the thousands of different databases, right, when you're migrating, large estates, right, and it helps you choose as well the best ones to do that. All right, so the Q&A is open, guys. I am launching right now a quick poll, checking your feedback for the session. Hopefully it was interesting for you guys. All right, and in the meantime, if you guys still have questions, make sure to type them in Q&A, okay? So we had various questions about, monitoring, right? Different things, questions about impact of scheduled database backups during patch and things like that, right? So we were basically answering those in the Q&A. If you guys still have questions, please make sure to type them in the Q&A, okay? All right, guys, so there is one question there. maybe Marty would take that in terms of, I'm not sure. So the question is, does the Oracle Database Data Studio has a feature roadmap of creating OCI GenAI embeddings with drag and drop flow?
Yeah, I think you're going to be seeing that in transforms coming up in, I can't give a date, but I've already seen demos of it and it's coming shortly.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm glad somebody asked that question too, because I didn't go into all the details about what we've been doing in terms of integrating large language models and select AI and all that. And yeah, that stuff is also there, right? Native into the service. So very powerful stuff.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, guys, keep the questions coming. In the meantime, I'm again sharing the links that I shared at the beginning with you guys. So, get started with Autonomous Database. You'll have all that information there. There's a spotlight specifically about the Oracle Database at Azure. So you're going to see the links there with the information about the sessions we had, the launch, documentation, everything that you need to get started. Okay. And well, I think that's it for now. So final thoughts. Again, if you go to the Learning Lounge, you're going to find links there where you're going to find the next sessions there listed, and you're going to find the replays of the sessions we had. Okay. We're going to plan very cool sessions for you guys, coming up right after next week, because next week is the Oracle Cloud World. So for those of you that have access to it, make sure to join us there. I'll have a link to the sessions. There's an agenda specifically for Autonomous Database. Marty, maybe we can put that in the page, right, in our Get Started link as well, so that folks can see it. So we have a link to all the Autonomous Database sessions specifically, right? An agenda for that. And then, okay, there's another question there coming up. Maybe, Marty, that's for you. Is there any planned timeline for when the Oracle databases will be seen in Azure rather than via multi-cloud console or in OCI?
So to be clear, like what we have in OCI, Oracle Database at Azure just shows up like any other Azure service, right? You go to the Azure console, you search for Oracle, you'll see Oracle at Azure, just like you would search for Kubernetes. You search for your service and it's there, and it's completely integrated into the Azure portal. And that's what's really, and also the, things like your DevOps, if you're using Terraform or you're using Azure CLI to spin up database, that's all good. You can use the APIs too. So it's truly a native Azure service. But as Robert was saying, right, you also get the benefit of the Oracle console as well, right? So, you get the benefits of both worlds, right? You get the benefits of what you have in the Azure portal, and then you also get the benefits of what's in the Oracle OCI database console. Database tools, people were asking about performance management, all of that, all of those goodies that you use all the time are there. So enjoy.
Right. Yeah, and I think to the guest that asked that question, I think you would benefit from watching the last week's presentation, right? I think that's great. So it's already there. So we have that recording available on YouTube, and it's available for you to watch. So I think you would benefit from watching what Marty was demonstrating with Dominic as well, in terms of exactly, how do you see this, right, happening inside Azure itself. Okay.
Yeah, and hopefully you can still see, I don't know if my screen share is there, but there's a picture of what it looks like in Azure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. Excellent. So again, guys, thank you very much for joining the session today. Keep the questions coming. I'll leave this open. So I won't end the webinar. I'll leave this open and just listening in to more questions that you might have. And And then again, I'll be here. Thank you for joining. I will leave you guys to some music. And again, thank you. And thank you, Robert. Thank you for doing the session for us. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. My pleasure.